All right, let's bring you this breaking news story. The family of former Zambian President Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu has confirmed that his funeral will take place here in South Africa. They say this is in accordance with the family's wishes for a private ceremony. The family says this period has been deeply emotional and they're grateful for the overwhelming support and condolences extended to the family from across the continent and the globe. Further details regarding the funeral arrangements and burial will be shared to the Zambian and South African public in due course.
I am an African.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Africa for Dummies podcast, where we give you clear, uncut and biased news that is going on the continent. And today we have a bit of a weird one, and before we get into it, of course, be sure to give us a like, subscribe, share this video, and check out all our other platforms, Instagram, our Spotify, and we're constantly updating and informing people on what is going on our continent. And before we jump into the topic we're having today, we're going to be discussing it with my co-host with the most, Zenge. How are you doing, bro?
Yeah, I'm alright, bro. I wasn't in the other one, so Nathan did a big solo on our 60th episode, actually. 60th episode. So we're over 60 episodes now. So yeah,
very true. And be sure to stay tuned. We have a lot more content that is coming your way. Today we are unfortunately discussing or continuing the sad state of the funeral of our former president in Zambia, President Edgar Chagwa Lungu. Now, for those of you who are tuned in, you would know that Zeng and I had done an episode a couple of weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, where we were looking at the life and death of our former president. Now, may surprise a lot of our viewers, but till now, the former president hasn't been buried. And this is because of a stalemate that is going on between the state and the former president. So to jump into what's going on and to inform everyone, I'll be looking at the government's perspective, and Zenge is going to be providing the family of the deceased perspective. So just jumping into the situation, I think as we remember from the previous episode, there was a lot of what word can I say here, but a lot of disagreements between the current government and the former head of state, or the now president Hakainde Hichilema, and the former president Edgar Lungu. They weren't really necessarily on the best of terms, and now it's kind of playing out in this situation, which is a little bit sad. And so from the state's perspective, they are basically insisting that the president, who had, if you remember from our previous episode, passed on in South Africa, should be brought back to Zambia and actually buried in a park called Embassy Park in Zambia. That's where we typically that's where all our former presidents are actually buried.
Embassy Presidential Memorial Park, yeah.
Precisely.
It's right in the center of government, like buildings.
Precisely. And that's where most all our head of states are buried, and the government believes that the former President Edgar Lungu, should be buried there and be given a proper state funeral. And there was actually a plan for the state funeral that was initially planned by the government in June 2024, where they actually 2025, where they actually released a I believe it's what's the word I'm looking for today? My brain's not working, but
a funeral program.
A funeral program for the former head of state, and that was rejected by the family. So Zenge, what were the family's initial wishes, and that caused the initial breakdown between both parties?
So basically, the Lungu died on the 5th of June, and then initially the first thing that came out was that basically Lungu, the family had a very strong demand. They wanted Lungu's funeral to not have the president of Zambia in attendance. They did not want Hakainde Hichilema, aka HH, to be present at Edgar Lungu's funeral. And then other aspects of the funeral were also they also wanted other aspects to be included. So they wanted this a state funeral of some kind to honor Edgar Lungu as the former president of Zambia. But at the same time, they also did not want the president of Zambia in attendance in any part really of the funeral. And they also had other aspects, like basically moved the body also to Petauke, which is his home village, and then also to Kitwe, I think, where he was born and where he grew up in his young, early childhood. And the government basically rejected those two aspects. I think, in fact, three of them, because when he died on the 5th, there was that back and forth. First, it was just outrageous. People were like, "Oh, wait, why are they saying the president should not attend?" and so on. Because in every state funeral, every death of every president of Zambia, both former president, those presidents who had died as former presidents, and those presidents who had died as current incumbent presidents. So our third and our fifth president, Levi Patrick Mwanawasa and Michael Sata, those died in office, and all of the others, former presidents, died after being president. In all those occasions, the sitting president of Zambia has been in attendance at that funeral. So this would be the first ever funeral, in the event that the family got their way, to be the first ever funeral that the president of Zambia is not in attendance. So there is no actual law particularly determining who should be in attendance at a state funeral. It's just protocol. Protocol basically can be written and unwritten. It's just how things are done, traditionally. There is protocol for a state funeral. So like military, 21 gun salute. If you are, if you are a lawyer, president of some kind, you go to sort of like a ceremony at the Supreme Court, because you are part of the judiciary in one form or the other. And then also sometimes, is it parliament? That's in the US, where they take them to parliament. But yeah, so there's various things that they do for a state funeral, official state, because this is the highest honor that you can give someone. The idea of a state funeral is that this person has done an enormous job and served very important positions to contribute to the country. So it's not a normal human being who gets a state funeral. Yeah. So the family basically had those requirements. Why did they have those requirements? Basically, the family do not like Hakainde Hichilema, because, especially as president, because of the way they feel their relative Edgar Lungu was treated. Lungu lost the 2021 election to Hakainde Hichilema, who had contested in an election before in 2015 and 2016. So they are known rivals. They have had rematches before. And Edgar Lungu, in 2023, October 28th, at the memorial service for Zambia's fourth president, remember I said Michael Sata died as president, Lungu took over from that guy. And at that memorial service in 2023, Lungu, who was former president at that time, declared that he wanted to return to politics. And he made it very specific that he does not care about the benefits. Like he said, he knows the benefits will be stripped off of him.
And just to add some context, usually when a president leaves office, they're given a set amount of benefits from the states. I believe there's a salary, there's security, there's quite a number of things, the house and
the secretary, servant.
Yeah, exactly.
Cars, yeah. And they have a special number plate, and then also, so there's a presidential benefits law. There's a law that governs that. I think it was enacted in 1993 or something like that. So it governs how the benefits that a president gets. So as Nathan said, all of those benefits, plus even your wife, the first lady, is entitled to some kind of salary for her whole life and protection. To some degree or another, and assistance. Children up until the age of 21, most of their things are done for them, like school fees and things like that. So regardless of if you are 2 years old when the president died and the president is your dad, up to the age of 21, you'll be taken care of. So all of that was stripped off of Lungu when he announced that he has returned to active politics. And I saw someone in SABC News, they were asking the foreign minister, "Oh no, why did you strip I think they confused active politics and presidency, and contesting for the presidency. But active politics is active politics, where basically you have one say or another, or you hold a formal office of a particular political party. It's not just like sitting back and maybe writing an opinion piece on the newspaper, but like you are actually involved in campaigns, in rallies, you have a position in the party. And Lungu was given the presidency of the PF again. And also eventually the chair of the Tonsi Alliance, which is the coalition of opposition
just to add
parties.
to that, if I'm not mistaken, the stipulation that the law that basically gives the former president benefits is dependent on them not getting back into active politics, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So those benefits were withdrawn, right? And then on the other hand, there were a lot of corruption cases. The Anti-Corruption Commission, Drug Enforcement Commission, Zambia's corruption fighting agencies have been pursuing people affiliated with Lungu as well as Lungu's family. And many of those in Lungu's camp, pro-Lungu supporters, including his family, feel like this is just unwarranted political persecution. But many of those cases are deemed as process of crime. Many houses, I think 8 cars. There was a case that I think there was even a court sitting that was supposed to be done in the third week of June, so like last week, where the First Lady was involved in. And she's basically wanted, right? She's in a active court case for corruption. So, there's that. There's a perception that they feel persecuted, unwarranted persecution. And they feel like their father was abused. And obviously, the rival coming in, who was a very prolific critic of Edgar Lungu during the time, especially in opposition, they feel like it was hypocritical for the current president to come and just say, oh, okay, guys, now, as former president, let's just, put that beside us and let's give it a quiet funeral. It feels like, okay, you are basically insulting our dad all this time throughout opposition, and then as president,
when he was sick, we wanted him to get the benefits back, but then stopped it.
Although I do have to correct, the secretary to the cabinet, who is basically the chief civil servant in Zambia, that's his position, he did say that the government, when Lungu was leaving this last trip, when he left Zambia to go to South Africa for medical treatment, where he died, Lungu did say that, no, not Lungu, sorry, but they did inform the government that Lungu is traveling. And according to Patrick Kangwa, the Secretary of Cabinet, he did say that we can provide help and facilitate for his medical treatment. And according to Kangwa's narration, the family just said, this is just to inform you. We're not asking you for anything. This is purely private. So that's his point. That's his defense.
That's Patrick Kangwa. Yeah.
That's what he said, actually. And he said that, when Lungu died on the 5th, and then on, when was that? It was a Friday. There was a Friday the 5th. So Friday I think it was Friday the 13th. Yeah. Friday the 13th of June. They came to an agreement and they compromised, basically. They said, okay, Lungu will not go to Petauke, he will not go to Kitwe. And they made a program. And there, Kangwa actually said that, to clear the rumors, we did not deny Lungu to leave. No one was fired because Lungu wanted to leave. Because they said someone was fired at the airport for allowing Lungu to go to South Africa. The Secretary of Cabinet denies that. Even the claim, as I said, the claim about medication, being denied medication, the Secretary of Cabinet denies that. So the framework, the funeral program began. And so Lungu was supposed to come back to Zambia on the 18th of June. On the 18th of June. And then
I think there was this whole thing, in South Africa, there was the plane, there was a red carpet, everything was being prepared in South Africa, cameras were out, everything was rolling, and then all of a sudden the red carpet was being put back I don't know. Maybe you can shed some more light on that.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Like, what? Unbelievable. Because on Friday, everyone was like, "Oh, the impasse is solved." And some heads of states like Bakili Muluzi, former president of Malawi, and and also Mnangagwa, was said to have been part and parcel behind the scenes trying to negotiate with the government and the family. And then on the 18th was the beginning of the funeral program. It's supposed to last from the 18th of June up until the 23rd of 23rd of June, which would be the burial of Edgar Lungu. So the planes was there, as you said. There was a plane, a private jet, private chartered plane, because the family insisted that, as they said he went to South Africa as a commoner. Apparently, Lungu, according to the family, went with an Uber.
Yeah. Apparently, he traveled in a normal, I don't know what you would call
economy
it,
class,
commercial plane, an economy class, and had to take an Uber from the airport to
in South Africa.
Yeah.
So they're saying, no, Lungu traveled like this, so you go on his own. We'll use our own means to take him back. So the plane was privately chartered. The government, I think. It was reported the government had offered one of the military Air Force planes, but their family was like, no. South Africa had a red carpet. South African Defense Forces were also there to do like a proper salute for the funeral procession to start beginning. And members of the Foreign Office in South Africa, the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, DIRCO, were also there. Journalists were there. South Africa's presidency, office in the presidency, actually announced that this is going to happen. And then last minute, there were even people waiting at the airport in Lusaka, in black,
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the family decided that, he's not coming. They're like, no, he's not going to come, because the family, they felt the UPND, so it's not the UPND, sorry, the Zambian government,
the state,
had reneged on some of the elements of the funeral procession. They did say that they wanted everyone to attend, which is a bit confusing, because they want many of the aspects to be private, but at the same time a state funeral. But they didn't want
the state
to be invite only, because the program was released by the government, and
I see.
So there was the Hakainde Hichilema as president, who was supposed to receive the body, back to Zambia, to his homeland. The family didn't want that, and then they also didn't like the fact that it was an invite only event, the reception of the body of Edgar Lungu. But I think from the government side of view, I think they knew that many people would come and politicize it. Like if it was invite only, first of all, it's a presidential pavilion. Most people, it's always invite only at a presidential pavilion. I don't think anyone can just go there and just swarm the airport, like those days when we had like a small airport where anyone can just pass. I don't understand that aspect. I mean, I get the invite only maybe for other things, but there's aspects of it where like the president was not in attendance, like they didn't.
Precisely.
Because there's like two sessions. There was a private session and then an official one after like the. So in the session there was the 18th. Lungu arrives, the president welcomes him, and then the body they didn't want the body to sleep in the national sort of conference center, in Mulungushi Conference Center. The body was every day going to go back to Lungu's personal house. Lungu's personal house, for reasons that I don't know.
Unknown.
That was one aspect which was in the program. And then there was also apparently they said the government sneaked in a session where there was going to be just like HH would be the first person to see. I don't know, there's some superstitious aspect of them not wanting the current president to see Lungu's body, or to be the first one to see Lungu's body upon arrival. Like, I don't know. So there were numerous aspects there. And then and then also there's just so many things. Then there's also, the idea of Lungu sort of laying in state for a few days in the National Conference Center. And then after that, there's one day where there will be an official one with all dignitaries, and then a private family one and a burial. So now in that lying of state, as I mentioned, you go back to his home every day. And then during the day, public people can go and
Yeah,
see it at the conference
probably.
center. That road going to Lungu's house apparently was scheduled for maintenance. And then 2 days before, the Road Development Agency said, "Oh, we are going to suspend the maintenance because of the funeral procession
funeral,
that will happen."
right.
But the family also added one of those elements to their reasons why they felt the government was being insincere. But on the other hand, the Road Development Agency said we are suspending maintenance on that road.
I mean,
So it's clear. I don't know. I don't know.
kind
Yeah,
of
it was very.
makes sense. I mean, because again, I'm not trying to sound like a pro
Yeah.
one party or another, but that kind of does make sense. I mean, it wouldn't make sense for roadworks to continue while,
Yeah.
such an important event is occurring.
Yeah.
But I think
So-
just yeah, I don't know if you had anything.
yeah. No. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say just like moving from that particular aspect of the funeral, I believe the body remained in South Africa, and
Yes.
the family was still in South Africa, and actually started to plan for a funeral in South Africa. They basically neglected and said, you know what, forget it, we're going to bury him in South Africa. And I think it even got to a point where the church service was planned, everything was prepared. People started even going to the church service, and then again, last minute, the state actually interjected this time. I believe that the Attorney General of Zambia actually filed an application at the South African court requesting that the funeral be stopped, and that they begin to basically apply for an application for the body to be repatriated to Zambia. And from the state's perspective, again, just to reiterate, is that the government's perspective is that they don't see this as a private issue. As Zenge mentioned, that the family really is trying to make it more private, but the state does not agree with that. They basically say that this is an issue of national interest. And I think one thing that was cited by Honorable Mulambo Haimbe, who is our foreign minister, basically talked about in 2021 how there was a similar case with the first president of Zambia, President Kenneth Kaunda, where the family had wanted a private funeral, but when the issue
The family. So the Kaunda issue, the family wanted Kaunda to be buried with his wife in a
Right.
farm in Chinsali, where Kaunda
Right.
was born, and I think they were together for like 67 years,
right,
him and his wife. So the family were like, yeah, no,
No,
we
we
want
want-
our dad buried with our mom. And then
Yeah.
the government, which was led by, ironically, Edgar Lungu,
Edgar Lungu,
said no.
took the issue to court, and
Yeah.
the court overruled. Not that it was the Lungu government that did that, but the court overruled and said that this is an issue. Yes, this is an issue of national interest, and therefore that the public interest outweighs the private interest, and that KK should be buried in, I believe it's Embassy Park, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
As the first president. And also from the state's perspective, they see that it's going to be a little bit challenging, practically challenging for citizens who want to view the late president, and pay their respects to the former president Edgar Lungu in this case, because his body would be he would be buried in South Africa, meaning that if
Yeah.
you're a citizen who wants to pay your respects to the former president, you literally have to take a flight to South Africa,
Or a bus.
or a bus, or drive,
Yeah.
whichever, or take a train, I believe, whichever way you wanna
Bro,
get there.
taking the train.
it takes
You'll arrive there next year.
yeah, but I think the funny thing is I've seen quite a number of videos. It really looks like fun. I want to try it out.
I really want to go on a train trip, but like everyone just looks down on me when I mention it. I
Thank
don't
you.
know.
Actually, you know what? Zenk,
I don't
we should
know
do that.
why.
We
I
should-
think
we,
it's
we
like-
can do that. We can do that.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
One of my friends, Luke, shout out to him. He took a trip from Tanzania to Zimbabwe.
On Thursday.
yeah.
To be honest, and the scenery is amazing.
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
know
and
it's actually quite cheap. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not very expensive.
Extremely cheap. Like
It's-
first class
yeah.
is extremely cheap, and it comes with
Yeah.
food too, and all that type of
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean, I would pack my own food, but like
Yeah.
you know, like I don't mind. Like I don't mind. It's experience. Yeah,
That would be a great video idea. A4D takes the
that's
Tazara.
not bad.
That's actually
Anyway,
a really great
yeah.
idea. Anyway, back to the issue. So the state basically trying to display the issues that the public interest and saying that we need to ensure that the president is buried in Zambia at the embassy park. And the application is expected to be, well, first of all, they already told the court about what they're trying to do, so the court stopped the funeral. And the application is expected, according to the Attorney General, is expected to be submitted on July the 3rd, and a hearing is scheduled for July 18th. And basically, the government is doing that to sort of to allow for more time for more negotiations to occur. So in my perspective, I don't think that the government is actually wishing that this case goes to court, but they are trying to win more time so that they can actually negotiate with the family, and hopefully that the case would be resolved before the South African courts are involved. So that's basically the perspective of the state, and this is currently where the situation is, stalemate. And it's kind of alarming because that means that he wouldn't have been buried for almost a month now.
More than a month.
And
he died on June 5th, and if truly the court has to decide on June the 18th, then that will be over a month of just not resting in peace.
Not resting.
So so it's and just to add a bit more context, when the government did that was actually the day. That was actually last week. I forgot the day. I think it was on a Wednesday. The family decided to actually have a funeral procession, and on that actual day, the government decided that day will be the day that they will. It was almost like a last minute thing. Send the South African lawyers, and there was people had already trooped to
South Africa.
To South Africa. And people were sat in the church in Johannesburg, and at the same time there was a court case going on, basically trying to halt the funeral procession. And as SABC journalists were saying that there's actually a great sense of anticipation and then and anxiety, and then the family came after that ruling was done, and it was sort of like everyone was a bit deflated. There's still no, so culturally in Zambia, body viewing is almost expected in a funeral, unless of course explicitly it would be quite extraordinary if there is no body viewing at a funeral. I'm not a fan of it, to be honest, so I don't know why it's the biggest deal, but I think for a lot of people it's like closure to some degree. So no one has seen the body, no one has seen a coffin actually, so the coffin was not even there at church as well. And a journalist had asked Makebe Zulu, who's a spokesperson for the family, and asked him, what's this issue about the body? Why can't we see the body? You're saying for now only the family can see the body. And the court actually supported that. They said only the family members who, core family members are allowed to see the body. But obviously there's all sorts of conspiracy theories. Is he dead? He's not dead? Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, the funerals, what was supposed to be a funeral ended up just being a memorial, technically, because there was no procession to bury after that, because the court simultaneously, whilst the church service was beginning to happen, in fact it was delayed, halted the burial, and he was supposed to be buried apparently in a similar area. I don't know if this is verified or not, in a similar burial graveyard as Winnie Mandela. And it's quite ironic, because on Winnie Mandela's funeral, and some PF, the political party that Lungu was leading, some PF supporters of Lungu have been citing, in fact, Nakachinda, the Secretary General of the Patriotic Front, have been citing Winnie Mandela's funeral when Malema talked about traitors pretending to be, praising this individual who has died at their funeral when they were part of their downfall. And he explicitly mentioned the United Democratic Front of South Africa. In Winnie Mandela's case, basically, Winnie Mandela was accused of killing a young boy called Stompie. She had a Nelson Mandela football team, which was basically a group of young guys who were basically huge supporters of Nelson Mandela, and they apparently would, call out sellouts and spies in the Mandela cells. And there was one boy called Stompie, and they killed him. They tortured him to death. And the blame was put on Winnie Mandela. and she was ostracized. The ANC sort of distanced themselves for a while. UDF led the charge. And then suddenly, so towards her latter years, she was rehabilitated, and so she was a polarizing figure for a while, and and so many people hated her, and then eventually she was sort of like, even at the Stompy's family, they forgave her, and the mother also forgave Winnie Mandela. And to be honest, to what extent was in control of that situation, no one really, it's very hard to say. But also at the same time, Nelson Mandela probably caused some deaths as well. And I've said that before, especially in the actual fight for freedom. George Washington is also responsible for deaths. But he was a wartime president. Mandela was literally in charge of a armed wing of the ANC. So people died. Hello.
Fair enough.
Whether it was, deliberate or just people
who
did not die in vain for the cause of war, we can debate that. But
I agree with you.
Back to
just to bring it back to Edgar Lungu.
But you see.
I understand the idea of contrast. It's quite. No, it's just thanks for drawing the similarities there. I think there's quite a lot of similarities. I think even the situation with Kenneth Kaunda when President Edgar Lungu was the president, I think is also a really strong comparison.
But also, there's also a lot of controversy around funerals in Zambia.
Generally, it's, I would say, as a Zambian, it's quite rare to go to a funeral where things go smoothly. Not saying that this is a reflection of Zambian culture. However, just to basically wrap it up, that's essentially the two sides of the stalemate that are occurring between the Zambian government and also the family of the deceased. Please stay tuned to the A4D Team, where we're going to continue to update you on this situation, and hopefully it can be real. Thank you. You want to add something?
Yeah, can I just add also, I think it's important to have an understanding of, when the accusation of them being, the Lungu family being persecuted, right? I hate to say it, but if we look at Hakainde Hichilema's time as an opposition leader, he had been arrested at least 15 times, the majority of which were under the Lungu presidency. So it's very, in terms of evenness, I don't think HH is even with Lungu. If HH was going to get even with Lungu, Lungu would have been sentenced to treason, which Hakainde Hichilema was in 2017. He was sentenced to treason for almost 4 months, requiring the Commonwealth to come and...
This is the sense of the worst prison.
And we spoke about it in our previous time. So the need for sort of perspective is important, because do you know how HH was taken out from his house? They went to his house, hundreds of paramilitary officials beat up a few guys, and then they reached his house, and I think it was in his room or in his bunker. I don't know. He has a big mansion, and I think there's a bunker in there. So they basically gassed the house, and some of his children were asthmatic. Some of them collapsed. I don't know if his wife or his children were asthmatic, but a number of them collapsed in his family. And that was the sort of the extremity of how Lungu's level of oppression was, which honestly is undeniable. So if we're going to be fair, just to add a bit of perspective, the Lungu family has been persecuted. They haven't actually finished their persecution trials. They haven't actually gone to jail yet. None of them has been to jail yet.
I think
whether you say it's politically motivated or not, they have. I don't think really, if we're going to put a table of persecution between HH's family and the Lungu family, I really don't think Lungu HH has been even if he really was going to be vindictive about what happened.
Just to add to what you're saying, I believe the president of Zambia, Hakainde Hichilema, actually had stated that quite proudly actually said like, "Hey, this is the first presidency or former president that still has his immunity intact." So President
Yeah.
Edgar Lungu still had his immunity intact. So there
And so
is,
immunity, yeah. So
yeah,
immunity basically means that there's a number of cases. I don't think it's all of them, but just about every situation, you can't really go to court.
yeah.
It's sort of like a gift,
Yeah,
I
but in
guess.
any case, I think we need to wrap this up. I think we
Yeah,
need
yeah,
to
yeah,
wrap
yeah.
this up. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
No worries.
Thanks so much for joining us. And yeah, as I said before, stay tuned. We're gonna keep you guys updated on this situation. Hopefully, it can be resolved amicably and soon. And yeah, we'll just keep you guys updated. Be sure to subscribe, to like, to share this video to people you think would benefit from listening to this. And to the people who are listening, who are subscribed, we thank you so much for all the love and support that you guys are sending our way. And yeah, I think see you guys on the next episode.
I am an African.